And you listen. You've done behind you. Well, yeah, it does. How many dollars? Come on over and say something.
All right, everybody, welcome. It is 1983 for you civilians. It's 7:03 p.m. on July 10th, 2025. Welcome to this month's meeting. I hope everyone had a wonderful break last month. A lot of you were at TAS. Per usual, NTAS is the dominant force of TAS Field School. I popped in momentarily to do a talk, but it sounded like a wonderful time. We found amazing sites. So I hope everyone was safe and enjoyed that, as well as the 4th of July holiday. And then a large number of us were on vacation. It sounds like everyone kind of fled to New Mexico and Colorado this year, which is really odd. There must be something in the water in Texas, so to speak. So good to see everybody. Welcome everyone in the room and online to the July 10 meeting. My name is Alexandra Younger. For our new members, I would like to welcome Michelle and Vince Villafranca. Welcome to NTAS. And we have 2 new members in the last couple of months. Remember, we still have student memberships available. So I've come across a few students at some field schools recently and think are going to sign up. So just a reminder, we do offer that. And thank you to our most recent North Texas archaeology donors. Your money is going to good use towards wonderful causes that you will hear about throughout the year. And then also congratulations to our 2 scholarship field school winners, Marissa Harris and Simon Jordan. They both did different field schools this year, but we're very excited to hear about their experience. General announcements, we have quite a lot. I think just catching up after missing about a month of meetings, but also because between summer and fall, traditionally we have events between now and then. So during the summer, there's a lot of field school activities where you're learning field work processes. And then coming into the fall season, it's very common to see academic conferences and as well as a lot of outreach opportunities, because a lot of states, not just Texas, has archaeological month or archaeology month, which is a big public outreach period in October. Okay, so for this month, we've got a few things coming up. So you guys all are very aware that we have ongoing excavations and investigations on the Joe Reed site locally, led by Dana Ritchie. So if you would like to get involved with that, please reach out to her. If you're more inclined to indoor settings, which I would understand in this current weather pattern we're in, the Ascendancy updates are also very popular. So please, please reach out to Martin Lushford if you'd like to get a little bit of live experience with real artifacts. That same day, there's a lovely lecture series being held in Weatherford that's particularly of interest to us. Lainey Garman is going to be discussing her father's legacy, Homer Norris, his role in the preservation of East Parker County's history and prehistory. And that'll be held in Weatherford at the aforementioned address, and you can reach out to Jenna Bloomtritt if you're interested in attending or listening in. Our resident steward, Brett Stevenson, has also made contact with the director of the Fort Worth Nature Center and Refuge regarding some archaeological sites of interest. that have been previously investigated but need a lot more work. Those are the gravel quarry and riverbank sites. So I just want to put this out there as a PSA to look for more information coming forthwith about our participation in that. There's a lot of archival stuff to look into as well as some artifacts. So we are exploring opportunities with them, essentially. Next month, our speaker is Chris Ringstaff. He says he's got a topic cooking for us, but I'm guessing it's probably related to lithics, which we have not done yet this year. Shortly following in September, we're going to come back to pinch pot making sessions, which we do every year. Molly has been heading this nonstop with us. THC gives us the materials and we sit around and gab and put them together, and then they go out to our October TAM events. So I really enjoy doing them because they're just easy and we kind of get to know each other. And yeah, it's a lovely time. So we'll do 2 sessions. The first one will be in the beginning of September, also at the Fort Worth Nature Center Refuge. So please reach out to Molly if you want to get involved. Now to the Texas Archaeology Month. The TAS meeting is going to be scheduled that second weekend. They're still looking for presentations, content, and posters and whatever you guys have to present on. So it's a worthwhile activity. It's going to be held in McAllen this year, which is pretty unusual for a lot of us, but I think it'll be worthwhile to attend. The middle of October is kind of a kickoff to what we typically do during TAM. As NTAS, we might bring some tools and accoutrements in sort of a booth setting to these public facing events. And we like to educate the public a little bit about archaeology, because you're always going to run into people who really don't know much, right? So that's kind of the basis for why we go to these events. And so in this case, we'll probably acquire a few members. Charlene will be there heading it, so please reach out to her to help her out if you're available that weekend. It's going to be a wonderful time. That's at Grand Prairie, which is this is our first time doing it, right? Second. Yeah. So it's a good one. And so yeah, if any of our members are close to the area, especially, please attend. And then after that, didn't quite make the month of October because Denton has way too much going on, I can attest. But we also have our annual event there, very similar setup. We might have some demonstrations. Lots of people will be there. So if you want to just do something public facing, no matter your level of understanding of archaeology, you know, just come and support, talk to people. It's a wonderful time. This is what we do in October, so we're very good at it. Or November, if that may be the case. And obviously look out for other events. We also participate in the Plano Conservancy one as well, and that'll also be in November. Quick reminder, just general stuff. We are still looking for articles, reports for our 2025 journal. No matter what the topic, we'd love to hear about it. So if you think you have something to publish, please reach out to us. We're very interested. It's always a good thing. And the last announcement is that the TAS annual conference, which is held in McAllen this year, will come to North Texas, year 2026, at the University of North Texas in Denton. And I will be personally, I've been told I am the local arrangements chair. We will start assembling our committee, people who want to fulfill those roles. I've got a couple people already involved, but obviously if you're really interested in doing, you know, whatever level of involvement, whether it's registrar, whether it's, you know, the finances and marketing, believe it or not, we need marketing. If you want to figure out like a role you can play in a conference and setting up a conference, let us know. It's going to be delightfully unhinged, and I can't wait to do it with you guys. So something to look forward to. Anyway, all of you please join me in welcoming our guest speaker tonight, Kim Cox, who's gonna talk about rock art, which I know we all love. Come on up, Kim. He's from Corpus Christi. I met him a few months ago at Paint Rock.
You did?
And I barely knew him. And he grabbed me and said, I need you to come look at this panel with me. And it was Spanish,
The date.
yeah, it was a date written by probably a Spaniard or probably a Portuguese man. And we had a very fun, delightful debate about that when we first met. But I'm delighted to have him here. I think we're all going to really enjoy his topic tonight. So please join me in welcoming Kim Cox.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, this thing actually works. How do I get this? We got to get the power.
Just read my slide. They're more fun.
While she's doing that, did any of you read the TAS newsletter for April? I wrote an article in there about paint rock, and I made an argument that paint rock really resembles the Mesoamerican codices, and I laid out my argument in there for that. And what I'm going to talk about tonight is why I could not have made that argument 10 years ago. But the paint rock is really an almanac, and it tells time, and I'm going to explain all that here. But I'm going to give you a little background first. So I don't have a pointer, but I guess I can use, yeah, that. Does that show up?
Yes.
That's the Thunderbird. That's what she's wearing as earrings. A lady that was a Comanche elder told me I should always carry the Thunderbird with me. So I've got it right there. That picture is in D-stretch, and it shows up right there on that part of the panel that has everything going on. As we'll go through, this is the winter solstice marker, and the hummingbirds are right here. Anyhow, so I have been involved in rock art for quite a long time, although I got sidetracked with Maya archaeology along with Jimmy many years ago, and worked with a guy that we both have worked with, Bob Rickless, on the coast, doing a lot of coastal archaeology. Let me see if I can, does that do that? No. Try this. It's not working. It's just a little bit of a problem. Okay. So at Paint Rock, we have benefited from really a revolution that has been going on for the last 10 years. In case any of you have not been paying attention to the whole field of rock art, it's completely changed in the last 10 years. And the major revolutionary here is this woman. She's Dr. Carolyn Boyd from Texas State University. And she has, along with the people that work with her, totally rewritten the field on rock art. If there is today a superstar in the field of rock art, she is it. I met her probably around the year 2000, I think. And today, rock art is probably at the forefront of Texas archaeology. There was a American Archaeology magazine just published an article saying that, or two articles, saying that Texas leads the nation in paleo studies and rock art, which is probably true. I mean, I'm sure that all of you are familiar with Mike Collins and the Galt site. Well, that's much older than than what we're talking about here with rock art. Rock art has essentially been a new phenomenon in the state, and she is the reason why. When I first met her, this wasn't the case. She was actually considered to be on the fringes of archaeology, in Texas archaeology. And one of the problems was that she was young and female and had a lot of ideas that didn't fit in with what the old guard believed. The old guard during my time has been essentially held by W.W. Newcomb and Harry Schaefer. Newcomb taught at the University of Texas, and I actually took a course from him. And Harry Schaefer, of course, as all of you know, was at Texas A&M for, I don't know, 100 years or so. He is now, well, yeah, he's only 87 years old, but he is now the archaeological consultant for the Whitty Museum. And he's actually been to Paint Rock a couple of times. Very interesting guy, by the way. Anyhow, what she became famous for was this panel. This is the White Shaman panel, and that's how it looks. And it has been drawn, well, okay. This is her book that essentially is her PhD dissertation that was published by Texas A&M Press in 2003. This book never got the recognition that it deserved because essentially she broke the code with this book, but nobody realized it. But that's okay, because in 2016, we published the White Shaman mural that won the SAA's 2017 Book of the Year Award, which is kind of like winning the Pulitzer Prize for archaeology. And it made her instantly famous when the White Shaman mural came out. So this is the story, to give you a little background of what we did. We started out in 2005 to take on the rock art of the Lower Pecos. Now, she decided, she was administering doing the administrative duties for her organization, which is SHUMRA, which probably all of you have heard of. It deals with the rock art of the Lower Pecos. This, by the way, the White Shaman panel is owned today by the Whitty Museum, and they take tours through it. And if you haven't done it, you should go do it if you can. I mean, you got to walk downhill for half a mile, which is no problem, except that you have to turn around, walk back uphill. And the last time I went, it was 106. There's no shade and no wind, and that was tough. But if you do it in the fall or the spring, it's quite doable, and it's not really that difficult of a hike to get down to it. I've been there probably 30 times, and it still gives me goosebumps to go down and look at the White Shaman. But anyhow, in 2005, she decided that she was going to go back and study the rock art because she had written her dissertation about it. And I offered to help her, and she graciously agreed to allow me to help her. I don't know if that was good or bad, but the question came up, which one do you want to take on? And the obvious answer was the White Shaman, because it's accessible. One of our advantages at Paint Rock is that we are accessible. And that is very important, because if you're going to study a rock art site, you want to be able to get to it. And the White Shaman is probably, outside of Seminole Canyon, the White Shaman is the most accessible of any of the rock art panels that there are. So when we decided to take it on, the question was, how do you do it? If you look at this, I mean, the thing looks like a mess, right? And the theory that led up to that time was that when people came in, they saw what was painted there, and they would paint something else. 100 years later, somebody else would come in and paint something else. and it eventually ended up looking like a mess. But consider this, and this will really blow your mind. The person who painted this had that exact picture in their mind before they ever touched the panel. They had that exact picture. So what does that mean? Everything in that panel is where it's supposed to be. That, to me, today, still blows my mind. I can't, it's hard to fathom that, but it's true. So the question was, how do you do anything with that panel? We're talking about like 2005, 2006. And what we decided to do was to take the figures and see if we could recognize anything. And in fact, this figure right here is a very typical Mesoamerican moon goddess. Decapitated, has the red line at the head, has the red squiggly lines coming down. And this figure over here is coming out of the solar steps. And if you've ever been to Teotihuacan, at the Ciudadela, there is a pyramid, kind of a small pyramid at the Ciudadela that has 6 steps on each side and 1 on the top. Those are the solar steps. This is the same idea. There are 6 steps on each side. There's a guy coming out of the middle of it who is probably a sun god retrieving the souls of the ancestors from the underworld. He's Kayamari or Kukulkan or Quetzalcoatl or whatever you want to, he's the hero with 1,000 faces. Okay, so we know that this is moon goddess, and that is probably the solar steps with the sun rising, which means that it's probably a creation story of some kind. And that's what we have to start with. My background was in Aztec and Maya iconography. And these 3 figures that are flowing down here, they're pointed down with the flowing hair, they look to me like the seats of Mime. The seats of Mime are star patterns or constellations that at the end of time or on solar eclipses turn into these skeletonized female demons that descend to Earth and eat everybody, right? And so that's the end of your time period. Or they do it on solar eclipses also. They essentially look like that. That's from the Borgia Codex. Okay, so to me, those figures had black dots in them. And I was telling Carolyn that it looks to me like the red paint has been painted over the black dots. If that is true, you have the possibility that they really are star patterns, and then they were turned into the seats of Mime. These are not earth divers. They don't fit the earth diver myth, but they do look like the seats of Mime. So Carolyn goes out there, and this person right here is Mark Willis. This one is Amanda Castaneda, and that's Carolyn. And they take a dynolite, which we have used at Paint Rock, and she looks at where the colors come together. And she takes, I think, 1,200 data points. And one night, I'm folding up my computer, turning it off at 11 o'clock at night, and my phone rings. And it says Carolyn Boyd. And Carolyn goes to bed at like 9 o'clock at night, gets up at 5, kind of like my wife. And it was odd to get a phone call from her at 11 o'clock at night. And I answered the phone and said, and this is one of the more memorable moments of my life. I said, Carolyn, is that you? And she says, yeah, we just got in. Are you sitting down? I said, okay, well, I am now. What's going on? And she says, listen to me. All of the black in the panel was drawn first. Then all of the red, then all of the yellow, and finally all of the white. Okay, well, to me, I mean, that's great, because that means that I may be right about this cease to meaning thing. And then I started thinking about it and said, well, you know, that kind of does away with the palimpsest argument for the panel. It really means that the panel was all painted at the same time. And it also means that the person who painted that panel had that exact picture in their mind before they ever put first paint on that panel. Everything there is where it has to be. He knew where every figure was going to go, because all the black went on first, and then all of the red. And what they came up with was this Harris matrix. It looks like this for 1,200 points. And then I started thinking, you know, this is all spectacular, but I don't understand how that's possible. This guy that's coming out of the solar steps has 9 tines on his antlers, 9 because he's coming up out of the underworld. And on those, he has these black dots that are the souls of the ancestors that he's probably bringing up, or they're peyote, one of the two. You're telling me that the black dots were drawn first? And I said, come on, Carolyn. You asked 1,000 artists to paint that picture. Nobody paints it like that. Who's going to draw the black dots first and then draw the red? I mean, how do you know where the black dots go, for crying out loud? And we've looked for traces of markings, like anything where they marked where they went. There's nothing there. The person who painted that did not sketch out that panel first before he started painting. He knew everything in his mind, which is just utterly unbelievable. But she says, yep, we actually looked at that very picture and determined that that was the way that it was drawn. Okay, so what I'm going to do, take the panel and I'm going to wipe it clean. This is how the panel is drawn. All the black goes on first, and you see that you've got the seats of Mimi right here, right? The black dots. Then the red was drawn over the top of them. And then they put on all of the yellow. And finally, they drew all of the white. That's how the panel was constructed. I mean, that's incredible. But but when you encounter something so totally counterintuitive as this, it has to mean something. Well, it actually does. The black is the black, red, yellow, white sequence is a time sequence. You have black of night, red of daybreak, yellow of morning, and white of noon. And that's a time sequence that's actually recognized in Mesoamerica. So it was painting about the creation of time was painted in a time sequence. That's pretty neat. All right. Sunset, December 21st, 2012. Carolyn and I had already sat through the moon. We got there after dark and watched the moon as it interacted with the panel way back in 2006. Unfortunately, we were not there at sunset. This came on December 21st, 2012, which coincidentally is the Maya cosmogenesis, right? That everybody was familiar with the Maya cosmogenesis, the day that the earth ended. You have the king glyph is the flower that represents the sun as a unit of time. You have 20 kin to the Winal, 18 Winal to tune, 20 tune to the Khatun, 20 Khatun to the Baktun, 13 Baktun in the age of the earth. And if you did the math on that real quick, you would come up to 5,000 some odd years, right? So the earth begins, or the latest age of the earth begins in August 11th, 3114 BC, and it comes to an end on December 21st, 2012. Purely coincidental that we were there, but what a great place to be to watch the earth come to an end. But the people who drew the panel outfoxed us on this. They prevented the world from coming to an end. And let me tell you how they did that. As the sun goes down on the winter solstice, the shadows come up, and the shadow comes up this figure until it decapitates the white shaman figure. This decapitation is so perfect that the shadow line comes across, hits the red line, goes down the red line, and cuts right down the bottom of the red line at the top of the white shaman. A perfect decapitation. That's all cool and neat, and people get all excited about that. Unfortunately, I have not been able to convince the Whitty Museum to take tours down there to watch the winter solstice sunset because they're afraid of liability going back. I mean, people who wear headlamps, for crying out loud. You know, it's ridiculous. There are probably only 24 people who have ever seen this happen. But anyhow, that's not the end of the story. The story goes on. And it goes on with this guy. This is Fray Bernardino de Sahagún. And when I talk to a whole group of students like I did back in June down in Belize, I give these talks and I say, you know, everybody should know who this guy is. I'm curious among you, how many of you have ever even heard of this guy? Well, okay, there's a scattering, right? There's about the same response that I get from students. Fray Bernardino de Sahagún lived almost the entire 16th century, 91 years old, and that time period was incredible. There's a book that is written about him by Miguel Leon Portilla, who calls him the first anthropologist and the greatest anthropologist who has ever lived. And this is why. He wrote a thing called the Florentine Codex, in which he was looking at the total destruction of the society that he dealt with, the Aztecs. I mean, he was watching it disintegrate in front of him. And he had been instructed, well, write down their ceremonies and stuff so that the Spanish can recognize them and then can punish them for doing their own ceremony. But he did a lot more than that. And even in the face of a lot of criticism, he persisted and wrote an 11-volume set called the Florentine Codex. In Mesoamerican writing systems, you have glottography, which are symbols that are related to sounds, which is the Mayan way of writing things. The Aztecs wrote in semasiography, where they wrote pictures, and the books were pictures, and the people that knew the stories could look at the pictures and then tell you the stories. In the middle 1500s, there were very few of these people left. They had all died off, and there was no new group coming up because the Spanish wouldn't permit that kind of thing. And so what Sahagún did was get the people who could still write the pictures, paint the pictures, and he got the students who were in the missions who could speak Nahuatl, Spanish, and Latin. And he got the elders to draw the pictures and tell the students what they meant. And the students wrote down what they meant. One of these volumes that he collected was about mythology. And in that volume was the story of the birth of Huitzilopochtli. who is the Aztec sun god. He's the most important god to the Aztecs. His mother was sweeping up on Mount Coatepec and found a ball of feathers, put it in her blouse, and became pregnant, an immaculate conception. His sister was so outraged that the mother had become pregnant, her name was Coyoyoshaqui, that she gathered her 400 brothers, who are the stars, and mounted a charge against the mother. Right before she got there, Huitzilopochtli was born in full armor, kind of like Athena, and he routed his 400 brothers and cut off his sister's head, threw it in the sky where it became the moon. Okay. The Mexican scholars who have written about this say that this all happens on the winter solstice. And what happens is, as the days get shorter, right, you've got to turn the whole system around on the winter solstice so the earth doesn't fall off into darkness. And then at the summer solstice, you have to do the same thing to reverse the time again. What the story is about the reversal of time, the triumph of the forces of light over the forces of darkness. Remember this one? The decapitation of the moon goddess on the winter solstice. This is the same story that Sahagún told 1,500 years later. The same story. That takes us to Paint Rock. Paint Rock is 30 miles east of San Angelo, and it's on the Concha River. The town is on the south side, the rock art is on the north side along the bluff that looks like this. This bluff has, well, it extends for about 1,500 meters, and it looks like that almost the whole way. But the rock art is concentrated in 300 meters. And for those of you who've read my article in the TAS newsletter, I explain why that is the case. At the east end, you have, well, wait a minute. I've got to point out Goodmaster here. You have, we do a lot of other stuff at Paint Rock, not just for rock art. And you'll see this lady down here who's interviewing a Comanche elder. I guess she's asking her, what do you think about Goodmaster's stuff going on here? And she says, I don't know what that stuff is. But but we have dirt archaeology going on. We consult with Native Americans. We do all of that kind of stuff. And over here, there's a big rock that you can't see, it weighs several tons, that Christopher and I have been talking about, trying to figure out what it is, why it is there. And my theory for the existence of Paint Rock in the first place has to do with that rock. I think that rock at some point was standing upright. And I think it got undercut by water. And it was funny because, if not a little ironic, at the equinox, I was talking to Bill Campbell, who owns the site, and said, Bill, you know, did your family ever remember water getting up this high and flowing through here? And he says, I don't remember. You know, the 1956 flood is the latest flood that we have. And then 7 days ago, it does this. That is the Concha River, 30 feet above its normal level. The site is way back here to the right. This is looking towards San Angelo. So I guess that answers my question, that the water got up high enough to where it could undercut anything that was there, and the stone may have actually plopped over from a previous flooding event. Okay, we have 3 different phases at Paint Rock. The first one is the Apache Comanche phase, which is all historic. This figure right here, which is the example of it, is the destruction of the Mission San Saba. It happened on Okay, you might correct me on this, but I think it happened on March 16th, 1758. That's my best guess, and I think that's right. This may be the earliest painting of actual historical events anywhere in Texas or the United States. The Homano phase goes from 500 AD to 1700 AD. All of our rock art interactions with the sun, all solar interactions fall within this Homano phase. There are well over 50 of them that are documented at Paint Rock, depending on how you count. The last phase, or the earliest phase, is the newer Pecos River style that has the torches down here that closely resembles stuff from the lower Pecos. And then we have the old Pecos River style, just one example of it. Summer Sigler found that doing the database for us. And I've had several people look at it that are very familiar with old Pecos River style. And everybody seems to agree that, yep, that's old Pecos River style. There's probably more of it there. It got wiped out or flaked off or painted over or something. But that is the oldest thing at Paint Rock, and it's pretty old. So at the east end of the site, we have the Changing Woman panel. And what happens with Changing Woman is that this is a figure that's known all over the Southwest, and even the Caddo have Changing Woman. But if you look at her, she has the hair spools, and there was no face that was painted on her, but somebody came along later and etched a face on it that is a Kachina-looking face. And under her arms, she has the hero twin. So the story is, on the vernal equinox, she's impregnated by the sun. The sun is always the father of the hero twins. And she gives birth and dies on the winter solstice. I mean, on the winter solstice. And then she's reborn and goes through the same thing again, thus her name, Changing Woman. If you look right over here, there's also another figure. And that figure in D-stretch looks like that. This is very odd. I'm slowly figuring this thing out. But there's an anthropomorph here that's holding something that looks like a scarlet macaw. And there's a scorpion sitting on its head that has a long squiggly black line that goes down to this arrow, and the arrow then pierces the macaw. And I'm open to ideas on this one because this is pretty weird. But if I figure out this one, I will be able to figure out the Changing Woman. Okay, the point is that Changing Woman is at the far east end of the site. There is nothing painted to the east of Changing Woman. Even though there are rocks there that you could paint on, there's nothing there. At the far west end of the site is the decapitation panel. We have 9 figures. We have these 3 up top and the 6 down here, closely resembling the lords of the underworld, right? The 9 lords of the underworld. If you're familiar with Popol Vuh, the Popol Vuh ends with the decapitation of the lords of the underworld, which is what's going on here. But these figures up top, you see their heads have been chiseled off, and down below, the one on the left has been chiseled off too. They whacked on this other guy's head, but they couldn't knock it off. But it was done, we know, by metal tools, because you see the metal tool scratches there. But if you look at these 3 figures over here on the right, you have towards sunset on the winter solstice again, you have the decapitation of these figures. And in fact, the one on the far right has its hands on those knobs on the shadow line. This only happens on the winter solstice. So what you have at Paint Rock, you have a birth scene on the east side, and that happens on the winter solstice, and you have the death scene at the far west side. There's nothing to the west of this panel. The entire site is encapsulated by birth on the winter solstice and death on the winter solstice. And everything in between, all of your solar interactions have to do with either the solstices or the equinoxes or the cross quarter days. It has to do with liminality, but that's a long explanation. So what we have here led me to write the article for the TAS newsletter, in which I said that this really resembles the Mesoamerican codices, the almanac sections of the Mesoamerican codices, in which they're divinatory. The purpose of the site probably has a divinatory purpose. Feel free to criticize me if you read the article. I'm sure that there are people that will. Anyhow, if you run Google on the site of Paint Rock, what you have is the winter solstice marker, which is this. This is really extraordinary. This is the first thing that they notice there that happens on one of those dates, a solar interaction. There's a point of light that comes up from the bottom. It hits the middle of those 7 cavities. 2 minutes on either side, it doesn't really work. It hits it at exact solar noon. Now you tell me how a stick in a shadow, I'll give you a stick in the shadow, tell you how long the stick is, and let you tell me how they figured out when solar noon was to the minute. It's just truly extraordinary. And if you think that that's easy, go give it a try. So what we have with this different shield figure is that all of the numerology matches up with the Uto-Aztecan speaking numerology system. You have 5, which is the number of completion. You have 5 up here, 5 crenellations. You have 9 feathers at the bottom. 9 is the number of the underworld, 9 lords of the underworld. And you have this point of light, which is a fire drill that comes up and hits the middle of these 7 figures. This is reminiscent of the 7 caves of creation, Chichimeca, the Aztec. This is from the Historia Tolteca Chichimeca. And you'll notice that up here in the upper right-hand corner, you have this priest drilling a new fire. The same concept is taking place at Paint Rock. At the other end, down at the other end, you have the equinox marker where the guy is walking the line. This is really extraordinary because it has to happen within about 10 hours of the actual moment of equinox, or it starts getting off because the sun's moving so quickly. What they did was sequence the rock art from this area. First of all, you have this point of light that goes to the center of these 2 circles at 327. At 337, the guy walks the line. And at 337, actually, this works better around 340, 341. This edge of light, shadow and light, splits the circle in 2. And that's your graphic example of the equinox. Now, I threw in the flower panel right at the last because it's the only thing that's outside of the Humano period that has a solar interaction. The flower panel is the 4-petaled flower. The only reason I put it there is because Mike Matthewitz, who's from California, wrote a book called The Flower World, which is really a good book, and I highly recommend it. But in the introduction to it, he takes Carolyn to task by saying that she's identifying items of the flower world that are 2,000 years old. He says that can't be. The flower world, the whole concept didn't come into Texas until 1400 AD. And my question to what you're looking at here is 2,000 years old or older. And my question to Mike Matthewitz is, what the hell is this? This is the classic Mesoamerican 4-petaled flower. Look at this pot that we found from Belize down here. It's almost exactly the same thing. It's the king glyph, and it represents the sun as a unit of time. Why do we think that it's associated with the sun? Because on the equinox, the sun draws a circle around this flower. And it only lasts for about 2 minutes, and it only happens on the equinox. I mean, this is mind-blowing again to us that this could actually be, but we've looked at it the day before, the day after, and it only happens on the equinox. Okay, finally, there is the hummingbirds. These are Summer Sigler's hummingbirds. Summer comes to me about 2 years ago, and she wants to work with us at Paint Rock. And so I said, take a panel, because the easiest way to teach a student is to learn the panel. Take it, see what you can do with it. When she took this panel, Bill Campbell, in his hour-long talk on when he takes a tour group through, did not even mention the hummingbirds. 2 years later, this is the most extraordinary solar interaction pet in all of North America. Her story that she writes up, that I have over here in the guidebooks, if you want to see them, is truly spectacular. But I'm not going to tell you the whole thing because it's a very long story, but it takes place over the winter solstice, the cross quarter day, and the vernal equinox. What I'm going to do, though, is show you the last 5 minutes, the last 15 minutes of the vernal equinox. The sun turns into the head of a hummingbird, and the point of the beak touches the red hummingbird right at its waist, right at the tail feathers. At the same moment, a shadow line cuts the ball player in two and cuts the ball in two. And then that's at 7:23. At 7:32, it moves up, this line moves up, decapitates the red hummingbird and decapitates the ball player at the same time. And this white hummingbird that's right here that you can barely see, you've got to do this in D-stretch to see it. As the sun is actually setting, the last light of the sun touches the tail feathers of the white hummingbird. I have several friends that are experts on the Mesoamerican codices. And when I showed them this, they just, every one of them came in to hear my talk in Denver. And I showed them this, and it was just like, wow. Gabriel Vale, who's probably the leading expert on the Mesoamerican codices, undoes her accordion file version of the Dresden Codex afterwards and says, you know, we've been wondering why the hummingbirds show up on the equinoxes, and I think you just figured it out. Except I didn't, Summer did. Summer is going to start graduate school next month as one of Carolyn Boyd's students. And it's really gratifying, and I know that Carol McCauley will back me up on this, that we love working with young students because of the unlimited potential that these people can come through with. And Summer is a great example of this. Anyhow, that's it. And I appreciate it, except that I told Jimmy I would show him the date. There's the date. This says Juno, Juno, Nueve, Neuvey, Anno, there's no tilde over the N, Anno 1-5, and I think it says 9-8. Paint Rock has a lot of surprises, and this is probably the greatest surprise that I have ever seen. I take photographs of the walls and I look at graffiti. I've recorded over 700 names in graffiti. I can tell the entire history of the Texas frontier just with the graffiti at Paint Rock. It's all there between 1848 and 1890. And so I come up with this thing, and it's like, what is this? And I send it to Derek Schroeder, and I said, I don't believe this date, except that it's obviously written in pen and ink. And he writes back, what's the problem? There were people there in 1590s. And I said, well, okay, so here's my problem. First of all, it's written in pen and ink, which means that somebody had to have pen and ink with them. Secondly, it had to be written by somebody that was at least semi-literate, although I don't know anybody that spelled Nueve like that. And third, it's the oldest written date in the United States. I mean, that doesn't give you heartburn? And he says, not me, it looks legit to me. I've run this by several people who are familiar with that style of writing from the 1500s. They all say that this is legitimate. And if it is, and Alex and Christopher both looked at this date. And it's really extraordinary, because talk about something that you never expected to find, and there it is, and it is extraordinary. That's the magic of paint rock. Anyhow, thank you. Questions?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Did the rise of the concho, did it do damage?
We haven't seen it yet, but that's one of the things that we were talking about. We were wondering about the rapid deposition there on that floodplain, because the rock that's there that we're really interested in had maybe half a meter on top of it of deposit. So it had fallen over before. There had been several floods through there. And so what we're interested in is seeing how quickly there's deposits of dirt. So we know, we were talking about earlier today, going back and trying to measure how much was deposited in areas that we can find the bottom of and then measure the deposits. So we can see how rapid the deposit. So actually the flood was very helpful to us, because it proved a whole bunch of things to me, and it allowed us to try to determine how rapid the deposit really is. If we can do that, we might be able to go back and make a guess about when that rock fell down and was starting to have flood deposits take place from it. Yes.
You know, the years that paint rock was painted, I mean, what were the time periods?
Well, those were the years that I showed you from the Homano time periods. I can go back to those.
When they began it.
Whoops, that was it. Those are your time periods. The Humano phase is by far and away most of the rock art, and all of the solar interactions take place in the Humano time period, except for that one. So
4,000 years ago, this was the old Pecos Street style.
3,000 to 4,000 years ago, that's our best guess. I mean, and I've had people that are real experts on that. I mean, Amanda Castaneda and Charles Koenig both looked at this, and both of them are whizzes on the rock art of the Lower Pecos. I mean, they know a lot. Charles Koenig, by the way, just got hired by the University of Texas and to teach Texas archaeology, and he starts in the fall. I mean, I don't know if you know Charles and Amanda. Now, Amanda's taking over the operations of Shumla, while Charles is going to, and they're living halfway between San Marcos and Austin. So good for Charles. UT could not have made a better choice.
Any questions?
Yeah, going back to the methodology where on the painting itself, where one color is applied and another color is applied right after that. I know we can see that it's very amazing to, consider art differently. Is there any ethnographic correlates where that style is gonna, that we've come across where that style is gonna apply somewhere in the past or
It
recently?
is applied all across the lower Pecos with Pecos River style rock art.
Okay.
I don't think that there are any exceptions that I know of. But when we first found this, when Summer and I found that this thing, I was telling Carolyn about it, and she said, well, look at it and see if the black was painted first and then the red. We did, and the black was painted first, and then all the red was painted over black. So it fits the color scheme. That is a recognized color scheme, by the way, at Teotihuacan. Because when Carolyn went down there and gave a talk, they were like, wow, we've got that same color scheme here. What the bottom line of the book is that the people that painted the rock art of the lower Pecos were the ancestors of the Aztecs. That's basically what it comes down to. And you see a lot of these ideas that show up and manifest themselves in Mesoamerica that originated in the lower Pecos. And there are a lot of Mesoamerican centric people out there, like Mike Matthews, that says that's impossible because the Olmec were the cradle of civilization, except they weren't. What you're seeing in the lower Pecos predates the Olmec and carries that. There's a picture, and I'm getting way off there. There's from is it Mystic Shelter? I think it's Mystic Shelter. There's a horned serpent, and the horned serpent is dated to like 2700 BC, right? When I'm in Mexico City, when Beverly and I were down there, I'm talking to the lady that's head of the Museum of Anthropology in Mexico City. And I asked her, what's the oldest date that you have on a horned serpent? And she says, oh, it's Olmec. So, okay, how old is that? 3,000 years old. That's the oldest date they have on a horned serpent. There's one from Mystic Shelter in the lower Pecos that is over 1,000 years older. What these Mesoamerican centric people are not willing to concede, but are going to have to at some point, is that a lot of these ideas that they're attributing to the Olmec or the pre-classic Maya actually are showing up in South Texas. It's like the flower that I showed you. How did that get there? Where did that idea come from? It's clearly flower. I mean, there are other flowers next to it too. Yes.
If in this space, is there room for people to gather and watch this, or is this more private ceremonial use or?
You're talking about at Paint Rock?
Yeah, but.
Well, you've got to walk along the bluff. There is an alcove there that's kind of a cave that you can walk back in. And it's pretty secluded. But most of this happens right along the bluff.
So is it something that somebody maybe made and it was just a tribute to whatever forces they were doing before? Or did people come and watch it every year? Or is there just sort of theory about like what?
Well, the idea that I put forth in the article, the TAS article, was that it's a divinatory almanac. It's like a liturgical calendar. You know, it says on this date, this is the feast of Saint Joseph, which we have here at Paint Rock, a depiction of it. And it always happens on March the 19th. And it always says that the next day is going to be the equinox, right? I mean, that's a liturgical calendar. That's what they're doing. The argument that I make in the article is you have actual examples of that. The date is an actual example of it being a liturgical calendar. That date is probably a Julian date and is one day before the summer solstice. If it is a Julian date, it's one day before the summer solstice. So The other thing that we had there is the picture of the Mission San Jose, with the Feast of San Jose, Feast of Saint Joseph is the primary event that goes on in San Antonio, where everybody comes in, you have these huge feasts. I mean, Easter, Christmas, I mean, that doesn't count. It's the Feast of Saint Joseph at the Mission San Jose. And the picture of the Mission San Jose that's in the book, and I explained all that in the book. The Mission San Jose serves the same purpose. It ties your calendar system into an actual date. And that's why I'm saying that the one up top, that's the whole purpose of the one up top, is it ties it into an actual date, and that's March 16th, 1758. Just like the date that was written in pen and ink is an actual date, where these people incorporate all calendar systems are sacred, right? So the basic philosophy is all things that move are alive and can be measured in time. Time is sacred, life is sacred, movement is sacred. So any system that measures time is sacred. And so you have the Spanish guy there, or Portuguese, and they say, we want you to write your date up here because we like your calendar system. We want you to incorporate that date into ours. That's why it's there.
Well, speaking of the 1598 date, there's one question from Zoom, and it is, are there any plans to date the ink from that 1598?
I'm not sure the ink is dated. It may be. But one of the problems with doing radiocarbon dates is you got to destroy it to get the date. And the thing you can barely see as it is. If there's some other system that I could come up with, and we've been talking about that, maybe running ultraviolet light on it to see if it fluoresces or something. I would try everything in my power before I would run a radiocarbon date on that day.
Everyone, please, once again, give a round of
We have the guidebook over here, and we also have it on flash drive. So if any of you want it, here it is.
Well, thank you, Ken. That was a wonderful talk and a lot for us to think about. But also, I think all of us are going to be hearing a lot more about Paint Rock in the coming months and years as they start kind of consolidating some of their efforts. So you definitely keep an ear out for more developments, but just incredible talk, synthesizing really the last decade plus of what's been going on, and not just rock art, but in Texas. So it's wonderful to hear how we're kind of leading those conversations. So thank you, and I really hope to actually bring you back to talk about more things we find, and maybe even Summer will consider coming to talk to us after she's not burned out from grad school. With that, I'd like to thank everybody for attending tonight, both in person and on Zoom. And it's 8:11 p.m. and we're going to conclude this talk for July 10th, 2025, and we will see you all next month for the next one. Good night, everybody.